Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Lindia Hayden. I work in the Office for Diversity and Inclusion, also known as ODI. I'm the co-lead with Pamela Abner of the Black Women Leaders Connect Employee Resource Group. This group was formed in November 2020. It's a collective of executive and senior level Black women administrative leaders with an established track record of management success. We are joined to support one another and to nurture and guide women within our health system and our communities. Black Women Leaders Connect plans to hold quarterly events like this on a variety of subject matters. If you want to know more about the group, its members, and future events, we will share the website in the chat area. Today's event, I'm very excited about it, will be recorded and will be posted in about a week on ODI's YouTube playlist channel, if you want to share it with others. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Maxine Legal. She is the Director of Patient Experience and Cultural Transformation at Mount Sinai Morningside. She's the moderator for today's event, Imposter Syndrome. Is it fact or is it fiction? Enjoy. Maxine?
Thank you so much, Lindia. I appreciate that introduction. It has been just a pleasure having the opportunity to work with Lindia on these panels. This is our second one. We're going to keep them going as long as we get the wonderful topics to explore and discuss. So as Lindia spoke about, our topic for today is imposter syndrome, fact or fiction. And we have a really awesome panel of women, and we're going to really dissect this. We're going to go deep into it. We're going to pull it apart, and we're going to be honest. We're going to be vulnerable, right? We're going to talk about what this is, because I'm sure that the people who are joining us today are joining us for saying to themselves, hey, do I have this? Or I have this, or could I have this? Or I had it. You know, this is a real thing, or maybe it's not. And that's why we're here. So I wanted to introduce our panel for this morning. I'm going to start with Dr. Yasmin Hurd. She's currently the director, the Center for Addictive Disorders at Mount Sinai Health System. Hello, Yasmin. I got permission. I'm allowed to call her Yasmin. Hello, Yasmin. How are you?
I'm good. And I just
Great.
want, I think they had an old thing, just that I'm the director of the Addiction Institute. So it was changed to an institute a couple of years ago, which is really great. Then I'll tell you what that means later. But it's great to join you, amazing ladies. And I think a really important topic.
Thank you so much. And thank you for clarifying. Yasmin, how long have you been with us here at Mount Sinai?
I've been at Mount Sinai crazy. The years have been by quickly, 14 years. And I'm in the Department of Psychiatry and Neuroscience, and I also have a secondary in, well, we won't be about it. You know, I've seen a lot of Sinai and the changes of Sinai the dramatic changes of Sinai over the past 14 years.
Wonderful, wonderful. And one other, well, maybe one, I lied, maybe one or two other questions. And that is, Yasmin, what do you enjoy most about your role?
So in addition to being the director of the Addiction Institute, and I will say, you know, when Sinai took in about all these other hospital systems, we became one of the largest clinical addiction footprints in the country. So we treat over 6,000 people with, say, opiate use disorder. It's enormous. And to me, you know, being the director of the Addiction Institute, it's how do we also leverage research, because I'm a neuroscientist as well. And I do a lot of studies understanding the neurobiology of addiction in hopes of developing treatments, because we have so many people who need help. And so for me, actually being able to advance medicine through science is what brings me joy. And having that opportunity at Sinai to do translational research that can have clinical and community impact is been the best thing of being at Sinai.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm going to have a little fun with you.
Uh-oh.
Yasmin, what's a fun fact about you? Something we wouldn't know if we saw you in the elevator.
My friends will say one of the fun facts about me is that I'm a prude, but I love painting nudes. I love drawing nudes. So they're like, you won't even show your body in this, but you're. So I love art and I love painting.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's great to have you with us. Wendy, how are you? Just unmute for me. Wendy O'Brien is the Vice President and Chief Nursing Finance Officer from Mount Sinai Health System. Wendy, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you,
Wait.
Maxine. Lovely to join you all.
Wendy, how long have you been with Mount Sinai?
Oh my, it's been 11 years. It's been, yeah, it went by very quickly, but it actually has been 11 years.
All right, all right. And tell me, what is one thing that you enjoy about your current role?
Oh my, well, you know, this is a new role for me and a new role for nursing for the most part. And I have to tell you, for me, it's exciting because it's groundbreaking. It gives nursing control over their own finances. Yeah. So very exciting. And just, you know, I get to explore as well as pull people along with me. So we do it together.
Nice.
Very interesting area. Yes.
I love that collaborative approach. Wendy, what's a fun fact about you? Something we wouldn't know about you if we saw you in an Uber.
Well, you know, one of the things I think is fun, and it's something I recently did. So, you know, this whole COVID crisis kind of changed the way we live, right? So I went searching for something to do to stay healthy, to keep the exercise going.
Yes.
And of all things, I ended up with horseback riding. So at this stage of my life, I am actually learning horseback riding and
I love it.
Loving it. Loving it. A lot of, you know, it takes more physical energy than you realize. I think most people think you just sit on this thing, right? No, you are constantly doing squats, constantly working on your core as you sit there and constantly afraid, and I mean scared, because you are on a living animal that is capable of just changing its mind at any time.
Any moment, absolutely. And they're very smart animals too.
Very smart, very loving, passionate. These animals are a joy, and I am loving that. Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Wendy. All right. And Legina Houghton, welcome.
Yes.
All right. And Legina, I see that you are, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. You're saying hello? All right. Yeah. Legina, you are the coordinator for the Mount Sinai Department of Health Education. Did I get that right? And Legina, how long have you been with Mount Sinai?
Earlier I said 11, but it's actually 12 years. I think it's going by so fast. Yeah.
All right. Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. And tell me what you enjoy most about your role.
I love everything that I do. But what I enjoy the most is having someone who has my back, who encourages me to sort of be that authentic self that we were talking about, and also just sort of continues to uplift my growth as both a health educator and as a social worker.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And Legina, what's a fun fact about you that we wouldn't know if we saw you in the cafeteria?
I have a lot, but I'll do one. So I'm very sex positive, and outside of the hospital, I hold workshops and facilitate conversations for people who identify as women, and helping them explore their sexual identities and sexual selves.
Wow.
So I love that work.
Wow.
All right. Thank you. We'll talk later. All right. Good stuff. Well, ladies, this is great. So glad you're with us. We've met you. We found out something fun, horseback riding. All right, we got a lot of things happening on this panel that I think is pretty cool. So that's great. Would anyone like to know my fun fact? I thought not. Okay, let's keep All right, I'll tell you, since you begged me. I love music, folks. It is my thing. I enjoy music. I love all different types of music, but right now I'm really into Afro beats, Nigerian music. I don't know where that came from. I started watching Nigerian movies a few months ago during the pandemic, and I've just fallen in love with that culture. But I love gospel and I love R&B. That's definitely my thing. I am a lover of music. That's so great. Imposter syndrome, here we go. I got a couple definitions here. I'm going to give one, and then we'll start talking about it. How's that? Is that okay?
Sounds good.
So imposter syndrome, thank you, Lindia, for giving me these definitions, is the experience of feeling like a phony. You feel as though at any moment you are going to be found out as a fraud, like you don't belong where you are, and you only got there through dumb luck. Now, it can affect anyone, no matter their social status, work background, skill level, or degree or expertise. It is labeled as an anxiety disorder that can lead to depression. So not to try and, because we have a PhD in this room, so I am not trying to diagnose anyone, but I'm going to give you guys some potential symptoms for imposter syndrome. Ask yourself these questions. Do you agonize over the smallest mistakes or flaws in your work? Do you attribute your success to luck or outside factors? Are you very sensitive to even constructive criticism? I am. Do you feel like you will inevitably be found out as a phony? And do you downplay your own expertise, even in areas where you are genuinely more skilled than others? So these are some introspective questions you begin to ask yourself as we dive into this topic. So I've defined what it is. Let me ask the ladies, when you think about imposter syndrome, how would you define it in your own words? And any one of you can jump right in.
I mean, I think that the definition that you framed is what I think it is as well. Because for me, it's this aspect of, you're a fraud, you don't really belong. And in the area of research where I started with, before all the administrative things that I stood in, and I still work with a lot of trainees, a lot of them still feel like they don't belong here because they're made to feel that they only got their position because they were Black or brown or a woman. And
Right.
That's one of the things that, I think feeds into this feeling of imposter, that I don't belong. I really didn't have the whatever it is, that they said that
Qualifications.
for that particular thing. And
Yeah.
that feeds into it. And to me, definitely when I was younger, I definitely bought into that. You started, and all of a sudden you realize, wait a second, you had more credentials than actually somebody else who thinks that they walk on water. But I think that that's the thing, that because of society, you're made to feel that you're a fake, you don't have enough credentials, you don't have enough of this or that or that. Forget even the credentials, the intellect, the capacity, and all of those, so that they make you feel like you don't belong, or you just got this, not just because of dumb luck, but because you're Black or Hispanic or woman, whatever, for that particular role.
Right. Thank you so much, Yasmin.
Wow.
Wendy or Legina?
Yeah, I was just to add to what Yasmin said, I 100% agree. I think it's also this notion of like, at least for myself, like my background, where did I come from, like my childhood, and then sort of saying like, how did I manage to be so, like different, and sort of escape some of those things. So it's sort of like you question, like, did I really do all of this? Am I really capable? And like Yasmin said, in my 20s, I'll say I dealt with that. And then sort of as I got older and really built up my own confidence through like, therapy and having supportive folks in my life, it just sort of minimizes it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wow. And Maxine, for me, it's really an issue of criticism. And I say criticism meaning self-criticism. It's always a sense of feeling, for me, not so much of how others perceive me. And I have a great quote I want to tell you. I'm just reading this book. The author is Jay Shetty, and he's actually, the title of the book is Think Like a Monk. But he made a quote, right? He made a quote in his book, in the opening chapter of his book. And he says, in 1902, sociologist Charles Horton Cooley wrote, "I am not what I think I am, and I am not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am." Right? Really, really mind-blowing. But all of that to say, really, it is that perception that I'm always looking to see, am I okay, or do you think I'm okay? Right? I think you're questioning my value or my worth, right? So I am always criticizing myself to say, what is she thinking? Did she think I did a good job? Did you think I covered all the bases, or whoever is in the room? So for me, it's always this sense of feeling that you could have prepared a little bit more. You could have, done a little bit more research. You had more information, done better. So it's a constant, self-criticism for me, and not so much that, I feel like, the sense is, I would be a better participant if I brought a little bit more to the table.
Absolutely. And I saw a lot of that. I looked at a couple of TED Talks and I Googled it as well. And that was one of the things that people who have imposter syndrome do. They over prepare, right? And a lot of times that over preparation wasn't even needed. They were ready. They were ready. They didn't have to do any of that. But then they rationalize, oh, I have to do that in order to be as good,
Yes.
So we're talking about it. And we phrase this event today as fact or fiction. So you've given your own definitions. Is it a real thing? Is it a fact or is it fiction? I've read articles about it being something that kind of exists more in environments that are toxic. It exists more in environments that might be biased. So is it really a fact, or are we making it up in our heads? What do you guys think about that?
Well, Maxine, I would like to think of it as a social construct, like everything else, right? I think, again, I like to look back on exposures that I've had. Just recently, there was a documentary on television that talked about Maasai marriages in the Maasai tribe. And because they're polygamous, right? They interviewed the wife number one, and she said she had no definition for jealousy, like jealousy of the other wives, because that's how they lived and that's how they grew. She looked forward to having more wives because it meant more companionship and more support for her, and more help in doing chores. When I think about imposter syndrome, I think that it is part of our culture in that we are constantly comparing ourselves to others, constantly criticizing, constantly, trying to live up or keep up. And I don't necessarily see it as a fact. I see it more as a perception that we all have to deal with internally, like an individual challenge for ourselves, rather than something that is out there. We have to live with it. But again, controlling, and my goal in life is really to control my mind and what comes into my mind, what I believe, what I perceive, because most of it is really what I internalize rather than what is always true and happening. Yes, we have issues in our society with race and racism and others, and they do play a part in adding an additional pressure. But it is how much of that pressure that I am willing to take on and live every day with. So I see it not necessarily as a fact. I challenge myself every day to say, you may feel this anxiety associated with being prepared, but how much of it is real? How much did someone put on you, and how much did you put on yourself?
Right. And I can I say something to you, Wendy? I thank you for that, because I mean, here I am, sitting with the vice president and chief nursing finance officer, and you're sitting here saying these things, and you figure, there's this belief, right, that the higher you get, the more confident you naturally feel, and you're able to do not, and not to say that you're not confident, but there's this rationale that when I get there, right, I'll know, and that may not be true. It's more of a journey, if you will.
There is no end game. The end game stops when you stop. There is always continuous growth, and continuous change. You just develop as you go along, and the more information you receive and the more you apply, the better you're able to handle life and life situations.
Absolutely. Yasmin or Legina, thoughts about fact or fiction?
Yeah, I wanted to just like this is hard to follow you, Wendy. That was a great response. But I wanted to add, I think what is maybe more factual is what you feel as a result of this imposter syndrome. To be honest, I don't know if it's fact or fiction, right? The right, but I think if we look at it like this is just a fact, that means that we can't undo it, because sometimes you can't undo facts. And so I think to keep that in mind, also like, what am I feeling as a result of this imposter? That's very real. But to also know that we can do something about it. And I have to add, you know, all of us in this room, we are very fortunate and very I don't want to say lucky, but we've come to a point in our careers and our lives where we can understand this concept, and so we can make changes. But there are also folks who have no idea about this, and they're just struggling with it every day. And I think that, you know, I feel like, you know, at least for myself, I have a personal responsibility to help folks like understand that even if you are feeling this way, that's valid, but that doesn't mean that you have to sort of live this way and go through something like this alone. Because for some people, it could be like it could cause them to just to cease and be stagnant. And I think we are all fortunate to even have to deal with this in the past. We were able to overcome it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Legina. Yasmin, before you speak, I just want to let the people in the chat know I'm seeing really awesome comments in the chat. Make sure that you select to everyone, not just the panelists, but all panelists and attendees, so that everyone can see your comments, because these comments are great. Alyssa says, personal responsibility to validate feelings, but also pull them up. That's Legina. The power of the mind is what Lindia put in there. I want to say her name right. I hope I don't mispronounce it. Maylee says, love this. Sometimes we are our own worst critics, but it's great that we are aware and there are tools to change our mindsets gradually. Go ahead, Yasmin.
No, so what she just said is exactly it. So I think it's both fact and fiction. In the context of what Wendy said in terms of the perception, you know, so it is really important. And what I mean by that, and so I come back to, like, you know, the neuroscientist that I am. So all the things that we feel, whether they may not be, you know, quote unquote real or not, feeds into the brain and feeds into the body. So the stress that you feel because you feel that, you know, you don't belong there, or you're made to feel that you don't belong there, whether it's fiction or true or not, the stress hormones, they all play on our memory. They play on our motor function to even move. And so the things that you would know normally under any other circumstance, you then happen to be in a room with others who you feel think that you don't belong. So then all of a sudden the stress hormones go, your memories, you just like stop, you freeze. And so it feeds this cycle. So unfortunately, something that might start off not being real, then your brain actually starts incorporating it is real. And that's when you don't function the way in which you should, and with the way in which you know you have the capacity to do it. So indeed, it is about, you know, how do you then find ways to, and I remember you were saying, you know, Maxine, about you looked at TED Talks. And I remember a very famous TED Talk, and Cuddy, her thing was fake it till you become it. And this is the thing, when you start saying, okay, this, and putting back, it's about perception, it's not real, and you start faking it, your brain starts to believe that, and it decreases all the stress, and who your real self is start coming out, your capacity starts coming out. So we internalize things that are not real and we make them real. And that's how our brain then starts responding, and our bodies start responding, and all the negative things happen. And once you start saying, no, this is not real, when you start saying, okay, you know what, let me fake it until I get there, you then change your reality.
Wow. I thank you.
Yeah, that was great. I felt that. I felt that. like that was my experience. So it felt like, does Yasmin know me?
I feel that, Legina, I feel that way too. I found this quote online. It says, it's not what you are that holds you back. It's what you think you are not.
Exactly. Exactly. And society, our society, unfortunately, and our society for women and people of color have, you know, throughout the centuries told you what you are not. So you started to embrace that rather than realizing you're actually more than what even they think you are, you know, more than what you have the capacity to be, I should say. You're much more than that. And so we hold ourselves back more so than anything else.
Right.
All right, I'm loving this. I'm so excited. Okay, let's dig a little deeper into this concept of imposter syndrome. I want to ask you guys, for those of you who are comfortable, to be a little vulnerable. Have you experienced it as a professional? And what was that like? Have you experienced it as a professional, and what, talk to me. Have you had that feeling of imposter syndrome? Go ahead, Wendy, you
So
want to go first?
Maxine, I think in my professional life, I constantly strive to be a better nurse, a better nurse leader, a better finance person. And that's what adds the additional stress and strain that you hear Yasmin speaking about. And that's what makes me even doubt myself, because being that type A personality, I would want to read everything there is about any subject. You would, oh, why didn't I read that? Oh, you didn't read that. I may have 10 books on my desk, but I would pick the one I didn't read and say, if you had looked at that book, or reviewed this or reviewed that, you would be better prepared. But I think that is what I experience, every day in my professional life. But I also am learning as I grow and grow both chronologically and mentally, that you have to be more forgiving of yourself at times. If in fact you want to be this, person that's empathetic towards others, try giving some to yourself first. Try developing yourself, try to lessen the judgments, the criticism on yourself. And then you're better able to do so with others. So whenever I feel that stress, I try to, control my mind, my breathing, and say, okay, let's get into the room. If it's a conversation or a meeting, let's get into the room, offer what you have, be willing to accept what others have to offer, and then move on, rather than thinking, oh, I've got to bring it all, to the table. So it's a constant personal development. It really is.
It is. And it's being self-aware, right, Wendy, of what you are
Self-awareness.
telling yourself.
And just being mindful of the stress that you put on yourself.
Of course.
So yeah, that's just basically the way I handle it.
Brenda says in the chat, don't be so hard on ourselves.
Exactly.
Nuru says, give yourself the grace you give others. Woo! And then she says, you're dropping some gems there, Wendy. Absolutely. Forgiveness is critical in this journey. It's what we tell ourselves. Yasmin or Legina, would you like to share a little bit about whether you've experienced imposter syndrome, or what that was like for you?
Yeah, I also want to add yes to everything Wendy said. And I think environment also plays a part in it, and like who you're surrounded by, some by choice, some not, right? Like as we're speaking in a professional setting. And I think that it's important to highlight, if we have, supervisors, right, or colleagues or people that are sort of feeding into this. So because, there's a old saying, sticks and stones don't break our bones, but words are never hurt, or something like that. And that's totally false. Words are crucial, right? And what we hear and how we hear them and what we perceive the messaging to be. And I know in my personal experience, being a young employee, a few years ago, starting out, I sort of had this person that I was like really connected to, who happened to be my supervisor at the time. And, I sort of thought that, I was learning all of these things, and, but it was almost like I was learning these things from her, but also like she was sort of sort of crushing me, right? And I wasn't even aware of it. And then I would sort of like be feeling like maybe I'm not good enough, I'm not doing it right. And then it really took it. It's hard to see that people you care about or people you like will do those things to you. It's sort of like when those factors are removed, when people are removed, you really can sort of blossom, right? And I feel like that's what happened to me. And then I would say that at the same time, when I had somebody in my corner, my new supervisor, I think she's here, who sort of helped uplift me, the imposter syndrome started to quell. So I think definitely plays a part into our environment and who's around us.
Are you getting deep here, Legina? Right? Because you're saying that, hold on, it's
I'm
like,
deep.
let's talk about what Yasmin said. She said fact or fiction. Yasmin said yes, right? Let's talk about what Wendy said, social construct. But now you're saying, listen, it's also about our environment. It's about the people that we work with, the people that we're around, and their voices as well. So it's not only the voice in our head, right? But it's also the people whose voices we listen to.
Yes.
And sometimes we look to for validation.
Yes.
So that's a message. That's a message for the leaders, right, who are watching us today.
Yep.
And for us to recognize the power that our words have over the people that have been entrusted to us.
Yes.
Right. Because in a lot of ways, we can either perpetuate that toxicity or we can shut it down.
Yep.
You know, that's very, leaders have such a tremendous responsibility in that sense to bring out the best in the people that work for them. Yasmin, go ahead, Legina, and I'll go to Yasmin.
One more comment,
Please,
because sometimes I'll be like to my manager, like, thank you. And she's like, Legina, like, that's what I'm supposed to do. Right. And just sort of some of those things sort of creep in, right? Because you're expecting folks to have your back. And then when they don't, you know, it's a whole thing. But thank you, Maxine.
Oh, no, thank you.
Allow me to share.
Oh, no, I'm happy to hear it. I receive it. Yasmin, what do you think? Have you experienced it? Have you, what's your take on this? Have you seen people walk through it? No, I won't. That's my next question. Have you experienced it? And what was that experience like?
I mean, I've definitely experienced it. I experienced it a lot more when I was younger, and probably because, again, coming back to what we were saying earlier, that as you get older, as you mature, you find ways of dealing with it, because then you start to realize you can identify and call it out for what it is. I still experience it. Unfortunately, in my role and in neuroscience or science in general, on the research front, there are not that many people who look like me, and especially when I started. And so, you're always the only one in the room. And so you look around and you just automatically feel that you don't belong there. And then when people start saying certain things, like Legina said, and people start treating you in a certain way, and they don't even sometimes understand where their negativity and their bias comes from, that wants to, make you feel that you don't belong, then you start, absorbing it yourself. So unfortunately, been there, done that, experienced all of it, but it does come back. And I agree in terms of the environment. And so, I think someone wrote in the chat room, because I saw it quickly go up, like internalized racism, internalized sexism, internalized all of these things. But I mean, we would take up more than an hour of the time that we have if I went through all the things that I've experienced. So it's, it's not about, can you identify when it happens to you? Trust me, you can. A lot of, young people, I am a role model, and I mentor a lot of people who are not in my group even, who come to me. And, there are people who practically every day go and cry in the bathroom because they feel that they don't belong here. That really breaks my heart. And a lot of them are the young trainees, and just trying to feel confident. And because somebody will say something that perhaps unintentional, but it feeds into, their feeling that they are not really good enough and that they'll never make it in the field. And that's the thing. So it's like, how do we, it's through talking and bringing everything out in the open. Everybody, I think, for the most part, could say they've felt sometime, some aspect that they were not, the best at this, the most prepared at that. But some of us take it more, and the ones of us who take it, internalize it more, happen to usually be people of color and women. And that's the thing, trying to make sure that young people know that they're not alone. I think a lot of times what feeds into the essence of the imposter syndrome is that you feel like you're alone. Nobody else is, feeling this. So everybody else must really belong. You're the only one that doesn't belong. And then it's important for everyone to know everybody goes through it.
Yeah.
I've never met, I'm sorry, I mean, okay, probably somebody in the audience may feel that they are great throughout their lives and they've had that strong confidence throughout their lives. But I've never really met, especially like I said, people of color and women who feel that. So you know that you're not alone. So
Yeah.
then you can let it go.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the thing, is that we hold on to it, but we've all experienced it. At least I shouldn't speak for everybody,
No.
majority of people I know have experienced.
I love what you said, because giving voice to it is really a powerful thing.
Yeah.
It's when you say it to someone and they're like, you serious? Like, like they can support you in that, like, really, that's how you're feeling? Let me tell you, more about what to help you and support you in that. You said a lot of people experience it. Michelle Obama, all right? The article says, she's Michelle friggin' Obama. She's quoted as saying, I still have a little imposter syndrome. It doesn't go away. That feeling that you shouldn't take me that seriously. What do I know? I share that with you because we all have doubts in our abilities about our power and what that power is. So Michelle Obama, Maya Angelou, right? She went as far as to say, whenever she would come out with a book, I've written 11 books, but each time I think, uh-oh, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody and they're going to find me out.
Yep.
Maya Angelou, the poet laureate. I'm in the chat and we were talking about leaders and their impact. Grace Marin says, our leaders are not always correct. Some leaders need to push capable team members down so they feel or look good. A more effective and supportive leader would coach, mentor, instead of put team members down. Now, Yasmin, I mean, we won't go to, I know you got a lot of, I'm sure there's a lot we can unpack there, but when we think about leaders who push others down, what is that really about? Is that about them feeling threatened, if you will, about what's going on with, do you understand what I'm saying? Maybe in the Gina's story, maybe and I don't know who the person is, but maybe they saw something and maybe they wanted to quelch that to some degree. What are your thoughts on that, Yasmin?
So, so there are different lines of why people put others down, from the aspect of that helps them to feel that they're better and bigger and in their positions. And also it's their insecurities. For me, there is nothing better than my trainees, the people working with me, team members, that they do well. That is a joy. That's a joy. So it's never been in my mind that, oh, I will look better if somebody else looks worse. The opposite. I don't need to be the smartest one in the room. And this is the thing I think that people don't realize. I love to have multiple different types of people much smarter than me in the different things, because we all add to the tapestry of knowledge. And when you feel that the only way that you feel that you're smart is to put somebody else down, it shows that you are actually not smart. It shows that you're weak. And so for me, really strong leaders are not those who, like I said, try to put people down. It's the opposite. So that's when, again, through the years that I've learned and how I started to overcome some of this imposter syndrome, not that it's gone, but is that I realized that the people who were so negative about me, it was their problem. And that actually, I was actually better than I thought I was, because they were threatened by me. Wow. So that actually gave me confidence to realize that, as I said, that I'm not really an imposter, as I realized, or else this person wouldn't be wasting all that energy. So that's when
Maxine,
please jump in.
I like to remind people that just because you have a title and a position does not mean that you have achieved that growth, that personal growth that you need. I like to remind all levels of employees that we're all on a path, right? We're all on this road of improvement, and leaders as well. We have opportunities to grow and to mature, and sometimes we demonstrate behaviors that are really not supportive and not positive in nature. But there's an opportunity where where the employee can help the leader, right? And help them identify their opportunities and their, and help them grow. So just to think that, oh, you see someone and they may be president of the organization, or they may be a chief. It's not to say that they're going to be this perfect person. They're in the same process, on the same path that we're all on. And you hope that you can help them. You know, as Yasmin mentioned, right? If you were not as good, would they even spend that much time, you know, focusing negatively on you? So in turn, now you help them realize that, wow, this person has a lot to offer. This person, you know, knows her stuff. And that's what, you know, teachings are all about, is that we all teach each other, no matter what stage of life we're in. It doesn't always go top down, it's bottom up most of the time, right? I can tell you in the number, you know, the decades that I've spent in leadership, I've learned the most from the staff around me, just, you know, seeing their different reactions and responses and learning to tailor mine according and do it better each time, right? Each time you encounter something negative or something that doesn't work, you know that you have to do it better next time. What tools did I miss? What are the triggers that I could use to grow and to improve? So,
Wisdom has no title,
Yes.
right? If you really think about it, right? You can learn from pretty much anyone. Now you're in my neck of the woods now with patient experience, right? Because I love that kind of stuff. With patient, everyone impacts the patient experience. It's a level playing field, right? Everyone has power in that kind of that kind of thinking, because we all impact, right, what the patient experiences. So thank you, Wendy. I appreciate that. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Let's talk about. We
Okay.
talked about what it is. We talked about it being a construct. We've talked about whether or not we've experienced it. We've talked about that inside voice as well as those external voices, right? So there are people who came on today who were intrigued by the topic. How do you address it though? If you think that you are in the midst of, right, and it's a journey, we've all talked about us being on this journey. We probably have all experienced it, but at different points and to different extents, right? How do you address it? What would you tell people to do in this situation? I'm Maxine. I'm coming to Yasmin, Wendy, and Legina, and I'm saying, listen, I'm struggling. This is really challenging for me. What can I do? What would you tell them?
I'll say, first of all, I'm an affirmations person. Someone close to me got me hooked into that. But really working on words for yourself, right? So something that inspires me, you mentioned the great Maya Angelou, right? Like still I rise. I have that tattooed on my wrist. It means to me that, you know, no matter what folks do or say to me, like I can get above that through work. The other thing relating to people who, because I'll be honest, sometimes leadership could be very intimidating when you hear like certain titles. You know, there's a VP in the room. You're like, right, you know, and so I hold on to like, well, they bleed like I bleed, right? I mean, where I come from, that's what we say. Like meaning that they are human. They are going through things. They feel, and so they're not better than me. I put myself in those shoes. Also being a mental health professional, I'm a therapist outside of the hospital. So I encourage folks to talk to people. You know, again, we have the luxury of sort of being able to go to therapy. So for those of us that have that option, talk to somebody, because there are people that can help you understand some of those things that Yasmin and Wendy were both talking about, like how, you know, outside triggers and past can all feed into this. And then my last suggestion would be find people that you go to, that's even in the hospital, that you
Support
trust
network.
and have. Yes, these conversations. And Yasmin, you mentioned you're like a mentor to folks, right? Seek out mentors and people that, you know, that sort of support you in that way.
Absolutely. Thank you, Legina. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that, you know, one of the things for how many people think about mentorship also just from a level that the person must be senior to you. But actually, you know, I say you need the quote unquote village. And it starts from young. You build a network throughout your life. And that network throughout your career could be peers, can be people like I think, you know, Wendy talked about that she learned from a lot from the people who, you know, she's supposed to be, you know, the leader of, the boss of, or whatever, the manager. And you also, so find people, even people who are not in your field, and build that mentor team. because you want a number of people in your mentor team. You want people who you can be honest with and who will be honest with you. Sometimes you have to realize your own weakness. So perhaps you are not that perfect in that particular job as you think you are.
Right.
And, you know, and so is it about imposter syndrome or just that that's not the right path for you?
Right.
And we talked about constructive criticism. So with the certain people you build up where you can actually be honest and they can be honest with you in a constructive manner.
Yeah.
And then you build people who, you know, they only think about the greatest things that, you know, you walk on water, they think. And, you know, so you have different people.
Balance.
Yeah, it's always about balance. It's always about a team that you are, and then you give that to somebody else as well. But you can't do this on your own. I mean, for me, I remember like a lot of my friends who are not scientists at all, they would think that I was like great. And they would like, oh, there is a lab named after her, the Yasmin Hurd lab. You know, I was laughing because everybody's lab is named after them. But for them, they thought, wow, this is so amazing. But that belief that they gave to me helped to dissipate all the other negativity. But, you know, it's important to make sure, though, that you, in addition to those people who have your back no matter what, that there are people who you can be, that can be honest with you about the weaknesses and the things you can work on to, in fact, overcome things that may be indeed real that you might really need to work on to get there. So I think it's the village, but you have to build that village. You know, not everybody's just going to come to you. You have to build that village.
Love it. Thank you, Yasmin.
Wow, Maxine, I agree with, you know, my two fellow panelists here. It's, you know, for me, my advice is always, you know, put your best foot forward, you know, do the best with what you're working on. First of all, make sure you know why you're there, why you're doing what you're doing, and make sure that it is for the right purposes, right? It cannot be, you know, to impress others or to make someone see you in a certain light. It has to be that is truly where you want to commit your time and energy to. And then when you decide that that's where you want to be and that's where you want your value to show, then put in the necessary work and surround yourself, you know, Yasmin mentioned, with people who would be honest with you and tell you, you know, what your opportunities are as well as your strengths. Someone that's going to say, that's going to be there to support you, but also tell you, wow, you know, I saw that interaction you had the other day. And I have to say, I was, you know, like taken aback because I thought you could have, you know, you were perceived as X, Y, or Z. You need that feedback from others. But you need to also, you know, guard your mind and know why you're doing what you're doing, right? And do it for the right reasons. Because if you go into, you know, your career, you know, founded on, you know, I'm just doing it to make money. I'm just doing it to be perceived as great. You know, I want everyone to worship me as a leader, for example, to do what I say. Then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And no amount of work will help you succeed in that situation. But if you do it because you're wholeheartedly believe it, you value this you know, this topic or this issue that you're pursuing, then you're going to give it your best. You're going to be comfortable in it, and then even when you question yourself, you can analyze why you do so. Do I question myself because I'm looking for you to acknowledge me, or do I question myself because I feel that I need to do something differently? You know, so I would always advise on, you know, first introspection to decide why am I where I am.
I mean, I think you hit on a really powerful point, and that's the concept of authenticity, right? And really being aware of who you are, knowing who you are, you know, getting to know yourself. And I see a hand. I see that hand.
Maxine, I was just going to add one thing. I think that one of the things that people do is that we compare ourselves to others too much. And so to me, we have to remember, we're all here on this planet on a different journey. Even if we might have the same job and education and, you know, title, we're on a different path. So that I think that that's why a lot of young people in particular they fail out, they drop out because they're comparing themselves so much. We're on, each of us, a different path. And therefore, we are successful for us in that path. And so a lot of times for me, it's that comparison that keeps you down. It's that comparison all the time, rather than realizing, we're all different for a reason.
Yeah.
And that you can have the same job, but we're here, as Wendy said, the reasons why you're going to it may differ, but you have to have that authenticity for it. But you're not like the person sitting next to you. You're not.
And-
We're all on different paths.
And each of us uniquely valuable. There's
Yeah.
not another Maxine Legal. There is only one, right? And even though you may have a million patient experience offices, Maxine is going to approach it like only Maxine can, right? And you have that unique value in your individuality that you bring to everything. So the comparison really is never fact, because
Right.
not be two Maxines. There's
Right.
only one.
Right. I've heard it said that the only person I should compete with is the person I was yesterday.
Yeah, I love
Right.
it.
And on this journey to be your best self. So if I was that yesterday, what can I do today to even grow on this journey?
Yes.
This is great. I have a question that I wanted to ask Yasmin in particular. When I was reading some of the material, they talked about this connection between imposter syndrome and depression and anxiety. The question I have for you is there a connection between imposter syndrome and addiction?
So I will say yes. And the reason why, because addiction is actually linked to depression and anxiety. Many people self-medicate and they start, drinking that alcohol, that glass of wine, and then it becomes more, or, so a lot of it sadly are interrelated. And so that's why the earlier we can start to decrease that stress, take it from, to realize that we are putting the toxin we're elevating these toxic, hormones that will lead to depression, lead to the anxiety, and then we'll need to self-medicate. And all of that feeds in, they all go together.
Yeah, it's how people cope. If you're hearing the internalized voice of I'm not good enough, you want to get rid of that, you might cope with something that's unhealthy. And I think I think that speaks to also people learning like other ways that they can cope when they have those internalized voices.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you for answering that. Wendy, I love what you said. I mean, thank you for that uniqueness. Because I do, sometimes my boss is like, you're really going to do that? I'm like, yeah, I am. Because of the way that, we approach things, and I think that that's what we need to embrace, right? You're right. There's only one Maxine, there's only one Yasmin, there's only one Legina, and there's only one Wendy, right? And that's the beauty of it. That's the uniqueness of what we bring to the table. So we're at about 5 minutes out. Unfortunately, this has been great. I got to start wrapping up this awesome dialogue before we close out at 12 o'clock. So let me say this, as we wrap up, what final points would you want to make, right? As we close out this topic on imposter syndrome, what inspirational quote or what encouragement would you give to anyone who's watched it with us today? And what can they do going forward? I had more questions. I wanted to talk about our new value, equity, right? And how that plays a part in imposter syndrome, and we ran out of time. But be that as it may.
Part two, yeah.
What'd you say, Legina? Go ahead.
Part two. We got to hold the part two.
We have to hold the part two. Absolutely. So as we close out, any final points on imposter?
My only final point, Maxine, my advice to everyone is really to guard your mind. We put a lot of emphasis on guarding possessions, material things, but we need to work a lot on the health of our minds, what we expose ourselves to, what we internalize, and how that impacts us. And I think the more work you put on that level, the better you are, and the better your chances of being a comfortable person, someone that is comfortable in their skin, so to say.
Yes.
So that's my advice in a nutshell.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you so much. Yasmin or Legina, final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll say two things. One, be kind to yourself. Award yourself the same way you do for others. And then the other thing is be comfortable with what you're thinking and what you're saying, and find folks that you could sort of be a soundboard for you. So we leave, sometimes we say, we're like, oh my God, I said this thing, I said this thing, right? More like, and that sounds, that's much easier than done. But that takes work, and then there are resources, right? Like, so find resources, and like I said, I encourage people to seek therapy.
Yes.
It does wonders.
Yes.
And so just focus on being okay with yourself.
And that's okay to seek therapy.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
okay. It's okay. Can we just say that? It's okay.
Especially for Black folks, there's this myth like, oh, we don't go to therapy. We need therapy. We are constantly dealing with a society that makes it hard for us to exist. And so how do we exist so we have to find ways. And Mount Sinai, we have insurance, and they have like these tiers, and they
have our EAP.
Have EAP, and you can see therapy with no copay, right? Like, if depending on your insurance. So take advantage of that.
Thank you so much, Legina. Yasmin.
So, I think that Wendy and Legina, it's great sharing the panel with them. We think the same, and and it shows. We come from many, from different walks of life in terms of the career paths that we're on, but we all have the same shared experience. So it says to you, you are not alone. I think this is the problem, that we all think that we're alone. We're not. And this panel definitely shows that. So it is important to share what you're feeling. It's important to develop and build a village, join a village. The more you internalize things, the more you are destroying yourself. So you're not alone. Share. That's what I think.
Thank you so much. This has been an awesome and wonderful experience for me. I want to thank Wendy. I want to thank Yasmin. I want to thank Legina. I've enjoyed this conversation. The only thing bad about this entire panel was it wasn't longer. That's all I could think about. But I really enjoy your vulnerability, your transparency, your honesty, your expertise. I'm sure that the people who attended today got wonderful insight as a result of us really kind of picking apart and digging deeper into this imposter syndrome, fact or fiction. So I want to thank all of you for being a part of our panel. And then for those who joined us today, I want to thank you so much for being a part of this panel discussion. We're going to be doing this on a quarterly basis, so you will likely see another flyer in the next couple of months, letting you know what our next topic will be and who the panelists will be for that upcoming event as well. But thank you for joining us. The chat was on fire. I wish I could have spent more time in there. I apologize, but this is just wonderful. So once again, everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.